Native Americans called this unique forest the thick woods. Later, French fur traders named it the Bois Grand, or Great Woods. Finally, in the 1800s, European settlers called it the Big Woods. The largest remaining section of the Big Woods is in Nerstrand Big Woods State Park, and that's where we are for today's walk. Nerstrand Big Woods State Park is about 45 miles south of Minneapolis and St. Paul. The nearest cities are Northfield, 11 miles away, and Faribault, 12 miles, and the park is 2 miles west of its namesake, the town of Nerstrand. To visit the park, you need to purchase either an annual or a one-day vehicle permit. Also, check the park's website before your visit. It lists everything visitors need to be aware of, like the availability of restrooms and water, and any trail closures. Hidden Falls Trail is the most popular of the 11 miles of trails in Nerstrand Big Woods State Park. From the parking lot or campground, it's about 1/2 mile to Hidden Falls on Prairie Creek. If you walk back the same way you came, or if you complete the Hidden Falls Trail loop, you'll walk about 1 mile. The graph at the bottom indicates the elevation change along this trail. The darker colors indicate the steeper portions of the trail. This route has a 150-foot elevation change. At Hidden Falls, you have the option of walking one or more of the trails on the other side of Prairie Creek. For example, adding the Beaver Trail to your walk makes for a walk of about 2 1/2 miles. If you want to extend your walk even further, walking the Fawn Trail and then the Beaver Trail makes the entire route about 3 3/4 miles. As the graphs indicate, these trails have more steep sections. All these trails are in the northern half of the park. You can also walk the trails in the southern half of the park. Here's an example of using the White Oak Trail to access the Big Woods Trail and the other trails on the south side of the county road that bisects the park. Since this route doesn't take you down into the valley of Prairie Creek, it doesn't have the elevation change of the other trails. Today I'm going to be walking to Hidden Falls. On the day I visited the park, the western leg of the Hidden Falls Trail was closed. Instead, from the parking lot, I followed the White Oak Trail until I reached the Beaver Trail. I then followed the Beaver Trail to Hidden Falls. This out and back route is about 2 3/4 miles with an elevation change of 211 feet. Nerstrand Big Woods State Park is unique among state parks in Minnesota. It's one of the few state parks that is not associated with either a major lake or a river, or with a historic site. Instead, it preserves the largest remnant of a unique forest habitat, the maple basswood forest, and it provides a home for a rare and endangered wildflower, the dwarf trout lily. The maple basswood forest is popularly called the Big Woods. Native Americans, French explorers, and European settlers all recognize this forest as being unique from the surrounding landscape. To the west were the prairies, to the north the pine woods, and to the east and south the oak savanna and the deciduous forest. Originally, the Big Woods covered about 3,000 square miles in south-central Minnesota. It stretched for 100 miles from Mankato to Monticello, and it averages about 40 miles wide. That is about 2 million acres of forest. Today, less than 1% of the Big Woods remains. European settlers discovered that it was more fertile than the prairie, so they cleared the forest for farmland. Of course, a lot of the forest also fell to urban expansion. Why did the big woods survive here? This land was originally carved up into small woodlots and sold to the local farmers. In all, this area was owned by 169 different owners. Each woodlot was about 5 to 10 acres in size. The farmers used their woodlot for fuel, lumber, and for food, tapping the sugar maple trees for sap to make syrup. But more importantly, they preserved the forest by not fencing the land and using it to graze cattle, and by not clear-cutting the trees. In the 1930s, a Wisconsin logging company began making plans to harvest the trees in the area. This motivated the local citizens to try to preserve the remaining forest. Negotiating with so many different property owners was very time-consuming. By 1945, the state had acquired about 70 of the woodlots and created Nerstrand State Park. Over the next couple of decades, more of the woodlots were acquired. Today, the park is about 2,800 acres. The canopy of a maple basswood forest is very dense. I know it doesn't look like that today, but during the summer, when the trees are fully leafed out, the canopy allows very little light to reach the forest floor. In some parts of the forest, only 1% of the available sunlight reaches the forest floor. Spring, however, is a different story. I'm in the park in early May. As you can see, the leaves on the trees have not fully developed yet. That enables the wildflowers to take advantage of the sunlight that is now reaching the forest floor. These woodland wildflowers are called spring ephemerals because, in the early spring, they quickly emerge from the ground, bloom, produce their seeds or fruit, store energy for next year, and then die back to their bulb, tuber, or rhizome. The spring ephemerals have adapted their life cycle to the availability of light in a maple basswood forest. The green carpet that you've been seeing on the forest floor throughout my entire walk today is these spring ephemeral wildflowers. Botanists estimate that over 50 varieties of wildflowers can be found in these forests. Most of these wildflowers are only a few inches tall. I'm too far above the ground with this video camera to clearly show you all the wildflowers. I did, however, take some pictures with my still camera. Here is a sample of some of the spring ephemerals I saw when I visited the park. In a week or so, the leaves on the trees will be fully developed. The canopy will close, and the forest floor will be in deep shade once again. These wildflowers will return to their dormant state, patiently awaiting the next spring. By summer, you will hardly know these wildflowers were even here. This wildflower bloom makes early spring a popular time to visit the park. Autumn, when the leaves of the sugar maple trees are brilliant red, orange, and gold, is another popular time. These warning signs indicate that we are entering an area where there are dwarf trout lily colonies. Minnesota is the only place in the world where this wildflower grows. The dwarf trout lily prefers north-facing hillsides in a maple basswood forest within the watershed of the Cannon River and its tributaries. Prairie Creek is a tributary of the Cannon River. Within Minnesota, only about 600 acres provide habitat that is suitable for this plant. Because it is so rare, the dwarf trout lily is on both the federal and state endangered species lists. The origin of the dwarf trout lily is not fully known, but some research suggests that it is a mutation of the white trout lily. The dwarf trout lily is similar to the much more common white trout lily. When not in bloom, it is difficult to tell these two plants apart. However, it is very easy when the plants are in bloom. The flowers of the dwarf trout lily are small, about 1/2 inch across. The flower of the white trout lily is much larger, 1 to 2 inches across. The flower of the dwarf trout lily is also a little more pinkish than the pure white of the white trout lily. Botanists believe the dwarf trout lily rarely produces seeds. Instead, it grows from an underground bulb. Its predominant form of reproduction appears to be by sending out a runner with a new bulb. This helps explain why its geographical range is so limited. One of the main threats to the dwarf trout lily is from humans. When you visit this park, make sure you stay on the trails. Leaving the trails and trampling through the woods can damage or destroy the fragile habitat of these wildflowers. We are now coming up to Hidden Falls on Prairie Creek. Prairie Creek is 26 miles long. Its source is further south outside the park. I believe it is fed by natural springs, as well as the rainfall that percolates through the soil and collects in the creek bed when it reaches the hard underlying bedrock. Prairie Creek flows to the northeast out of the park. It eventually empties into the Cannon River at Lake Billisby. The creek probably helped preserve this section of the Big Woods, since the valley of Prairie Creek and the ravines that lead to the valley made this area less suitable for agriculture. Hidden Falls is a drop of 10 feet over a limestone shelf. If you look downstream from the falls, you'll see chunks of limestone in the creek bed. That's because the limestone shelf is periodically breaking off and falling into the creek bed. The limestone shelf lies on top of a softer layer of shale that is eroding faster than the limestone. When it doesn't have the support it needs, the limestone shelf breaks off. As this process repeats itself, the falls slowly retreats upstream. The pool below the falls is a popular place for children and for adults to cool their feet. If you don't see many people on the trails, you'll likely find them around the falls. The Hidden Falls Trail, if it's open, is the most direct route to the falls from either the campground, picnic area, or parking lot. After a dry spell in summer, the flow of Prairie Creek may be reduced to a trickle, but I don't believe the creek entirely dries up. Conversely, during the spring snowmelt and after heavy rainfalls in summer, the volume of water in the creek can significantly increase. If that's the case, crossing over the creek at the falls to access the trails on the other side may not be possible. When you visit the park, don't forget to bring a camera. Whether it's the wildflowers in the spring, the foliage in the fall, or hidden falls at any time of year, there's always something to see at Nerstrand Big Woods State Park. Thanks for going on this walk with me. I hope it inspires you to stay both physically active by walking trails like this one, and to stay mentally active by continuing to learn new things. If something I said sparked your interest, like the big woods, the dwarf trout lily, or even Nerstrand State Park itself, check out the description of this video. I included links to a few resources so you can continue to learn more about these topics. If you like this type of content and want to see more from Elder Trekker, click the subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I upload a new video, click the bell icon. And if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. That really helps this channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.